Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hello everyone. Welcome to Academic Speaking. I'm Nadya Resti Verawaty from G class. I would like to present you an important topic. The aim of my presentation today is about sexual harassment and sexual abusement. My talk will be in three parts. The first is the definition of sexual harassment and sexual abusement. The second is the factual examples of sexual harassment and sexual abusement. The last is the impact for the victims. Now, let's talk about the definition of sexual harassment and sexual abusement. The first is definition of sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is behavior or attention of a sexual nature that is unwanted or unwelcome and results in disturbing the recipient of the harassment. Sexual harassment includes, but is not limited to, sexual favors if he or she wants something, coercion of sexual activity, derogatory statements about sexual orientation or sexuality, requests to perform sexual acts that the perpetrator likes, speech or behavior that has a sexual connotation, all of which can be classified as sexual harassment. It can be concluded that sexual harassment is behavior or action that is disturbing, annoying, and uninvited by a person against another person in the form of behavior with sexual connotations that is carried out unilaterally and is not desired by the victim. Perpetrators of sexual harassment can be anyone regardless of gender, age, education, cultural values, religion values, citizenship, background, or social status. Victims of sexually harassing behavior are encouraged to record every incident, including the identity of the perpetrator, location, time, place, witness, and behavior that is considered unpleasant. The forms of sexual harassment themselves vary, ranging from just whistling, views that seems to investigate every curve of the body, groping sensitive parts, and showing pornographic images. Now, the second is definition of sexual abusement. Abuse means ill treatment, torture, or ill treatment, the use of physical force and power. According to the World Health Organization, sexual violence can be defined as any behavior carried out by targeting a person's sexuality or sexual organs without obtaining consent and having an element of coercion or threat. Sexual abuse includes forcing sexual intercourse against someone, and sexual abuse, also referred to as molestation, is abusive sexual behavior by one person upon another. It is often perpetrated using force or by taking advantage of another. Sexual abusement includes activities that lead to sexual solicitation or urging, such as kissing and taking other actions that are not desired by the victim. However, it is undeniable that the victims of sexual abusement are not only women or girls, but also boys. This is mostly due to the deviant behavior of the perpetrator. It can be concluded that what is meant by sexual abusement is any form of coercion that leads to a person's sexuality, resulting in physical and psychological harm to the victim, and much influenced by gender and cultural bias. Then, are sexual harassment and sexual abusement the same? No, both are different. Sexual abuse and sexual harassment are two different things. Sexual abuse is a term that has a broader scope than sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is a type of sexual abuse. According to the National Commission on Violence Against Women, there are some behaviors that can be classified as forms of sexual abuse, namely rape, sexual intimidation, including threats or attempted rape, sexual harassment, sexual exploitation, trafficking of women for sexual purposes, forced prostitution, sexual slavery, forced marriage, including hanging divorce, forced pregnancy, forced abortion, sexual torture, and inhuman and sexual punishment. Now, let's talk about the factual examples of sexual harassment and sexual abusement. There are quite sad facts. According to the Ministry of Women's Empowerment and Child Protection, in 2020, cases of sexual abuse in Indonesia will be the highest at around 7,191 cases. There are also other facts that must be considered, such as the first, majority of cases and unresolved. Based on the report of a quantitative study of gender equality barometers that 57% of cases of sexual violence ended without resolution. The rest, 39.9% of perpetrators paid material compensation in the form of money. 26.2% of perpetrators married the victim. 23.8% ended on amicable and familial terms. However, only 19.2% managed to ensnare the perpetrators legally. The second is the cause of sexual harassment and abusement is not from the victim's clothing. Survey data from the Coalition for Safe Public Spaces in 2019, involving more than 60,000 participants, indicates the victims of sexual harassment and abusement are not solely due to the clothes they wear. The data shows that the victim wears a hijab 17%, long sleeves 16%, wears skirts and trousers 18%, school uniforms 14%, and another 14% wears loose clothes. The third is age is not a benchmark. In fact, the oldest victims of sexual harassment and abusement in Indonesia are women aged 70 years. This breaks the stereotype that exists in society about the victim must be young and openly dressed. The fourth is men can be victims. The case of Gilang, or the victim of a celebrity convicted or immoral acts who was sentenced to 5 years in prison, for example. Even the National Commission for Child Protection finding in 2018 cases of sexual harassment and abusement against boys in Indonesia were 122 cases. The last is perpetrators can be from people that no one or close with us. In Indonesia itself, often the perpetrators are close and known people, so non-consensual immoral acts are often carried out by people close to the victim. And during a pandemic like now, news often appears about the perpetrators of sexual harassment being their own family. Now, let's move to the impact of sexual harassment and sexual abusement. The impact of sexual harassment and sexual abusement can affect both sides, socially and personally. Personally, the impact of sexual harassment and sexual abusement can affect physical and psychological conditions. Psychological impact. Every survivor of sexual abusement or sexual harassment must feel the psychological impact of the treatment they receive. Here are some things that are often experienced by victims of sexual abusement or sexual harassment. The first is easily restless. The second is have mental disorders such as depression and panic disorder. The third is symptoms of post-traumatic stress disorder. The fourth is having trouble sleeping and frequent nightmares. The fifth is self-harm. The sixth is there is an urge to end life. Physical impacts from the existing psychological impact, not infrequently a series of complications that affect physical health. Some of them are chronic pain appears, infection or bleeding in the vagina or anus. The third is exposure to sexually transmitted disease or STDs, such as chlamydia, herpes, hepatitis, and HIV. Not only affects physical and mental health or psychological condition, social victims of sexual harassment or sexual abuse will also feel difficult to trust others, often self-isolate, and then there are shunned by the people around and reluctant and even afraid to establish close relationships with other people. In my opinion, sexual harassment and sexual abusement should conscious should be followed up. The law for such acts should also be more firmly established because sexual harassment and sexual abusement do not only happen to adult women or teenagers but also to the men. And these acts are carried out by perpetrators regardless of age. The victims should also be given the best treatment by a psychologist or psychiatrist to restore their psychological condition. The conclusion that I can give is acts such as sexual harassment and sexual abusement should not occur. Things like this must be considered. So, as not to increase the number of the victims, counseling or seminars about sexual harassment and sexual abusement also need to be done so that we are all more aware and there are no more perpetrators of bad actions like this anymore. Because surely the victims have the trauma afterward. Okay, everyone, we are in the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Stay safe, stay healthy. See you and wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.